All right, so you're back for part two. If you stuck with me for the first part, good job. I know that's a lot of information to copy into a screen and get to run properly without errors. So if you're having trouble, let me know. Maybe I can help out. Um, so I started this back up again today. It's been running for a few minutes, and this is chronograph again, just checking my data source here under Explorer to see, make sure I have some data. So under ANT-BMS AutoGen data 1 again is here is our columns with information in them. And now I'm going to show you how to set up Grafana. So Grafana is at whatever your IP is for your Pi. Make sure that you have it running, that it's started on that Pi. And then you should be able to hit it on port 3000. And you'll get redirected to this login page where the default here is admin, and we're going to log in. And here it's asking you if you want to change that password. I'm not going to change it right now, but if you wanted to, you could. But in other words, it's going to ask you every time to change it. Now this is the wizard here. Grafana is running independently from Influx, so you still need to connect to it. So we have to add a data source, and that data source is InfluxDB. And here is where you're going to tell it where it's running. All right, so it is going to be running at http://localhost. And I'm sorry, we're going to put the IP of the machine, which is 192.168.1.200. And the default port it runs on is 8086. We haven't set up any authentication, so we just need to tell it what database, and that database is ANT-BMS. So we're going to tell it ANT-BMS. Save and test. And it's working. So we have that one set up. So now we can come back over here and create a dashboard. New dashboard. And now we need to tell it what kind of visualization we're going to use. So we're going to use a graph here to see these battery voltages. We want a line graph. All right, so we need to add some data here first, and we're going to do that in the query screen. And it's going to ask you select from default, and default is where you're getting it, right? So the default is the InfluxDB connector we created, and that's always going to be kind of default. So data 1 is where it was located, and then the field that we wanted is column 27 back. So now we need to add a query for each one here, right? So this one will be data 1, 26. And this one's going to be cell number 16. The other thing we can do here is speed this up a little. This duplicate. this will be cell 15. So that was painful, but now that we've got all those entered in, there's some fill mode options. So let's see, you want these values connected, and we don't want any fill underneath. We want to show data points or don't show data points. It's up to you. So each one of these is an individual data point that it's gathered. So if we come over here, we can also override decimal points. We want 3 in this case. And the unit, right, is voltage, which is a measure of energy. We'll leave the min and max at auto, but then you can also do down here, you can do min, max, current, average, and again decimals, 3. You can do it as a table so that you can scroll through it. What else is useful here? General is where you would set the title. This is cell voltages. Make it transparent. You can add links to other graphs if you wanted to. And you can also do some alerting, which I'm not going to cover in this video, but maybe in a future video. In other words, there's plenty of YouTube videos for Grafana on setting up alerts. So we've got our queries set up to query each cell voltage there. We should be good. Get rid of this link. And come back to the dashboard. So just keep in mind that this dashboard will not save unless you save it. And we're going to call this ANT-BMS. Save. So now you can use Grafana to look at this data in a really granular way, can narrow it down. Keep in mind here that when you do connected, it's going to connect these points over time. So see how it jumps. These are 2 different data points. Actually, there's only 3 data points in the set that it's gathered so far. So as you get more data over time, you'll have more data points. But if it's jumping like that, it means that it's not gathering the data over in your Nodered properly. And right now it looks like it's still getting some data here. So the other stuff we might want to gather, that should be pack voltage. This should be current. This is getting an error because it's interfering with, it's trying to pull data off of this BMS while I'm gathering it for my other system, so it's colliding with it occasionally and not getting stuff. So let's see if we can. This auto refresh as well is important over here. So right now it's off and it will only refresh when I refresh it manually, but you can set it to do it automatically, and then just make sure that when you're making changes to the dashboard at all, you save it every time. So there you go. Now we've got quite a few data points here, and we can add some voltages here. So what did we say that was? Column 4. Column 7. Over here we need to do column 7, so we're going to do a gauge, and the query is data1 field value column 7. And there's our amps going out of the battery currently. Or we could graph that too, right? So visualization could just as easily be a graph for that. Null value connected. That's what we want. In other words, it when it's not pulling data, it will give you zeros, if you notice that there. So it could only show the points, or you can connect them where it kind of smooths the graph out there. So, and let's see, so this is our back current, and it is energy. Amp. And we can also do max, min, current, decimals. I think we only have one here, so we can do just one there. Maybe we might want to add, let's see, what other data do we have here? Total voltage, column 8. So we could do that. Gauge, maybe? Yeah. Column 8. And then min maybe 46, max 58. And over here is where you would set your high, so maybe that's at 90%. You can also add thresholds, right? So let's see, this would be D7. This is 48. You get the idea. Let's see, dashboard. And if you star it, you can also make it your default, which will make it show up when you just load the page, typically. So all of this is running on this Raspberry Pi, but as I mentioned before, you could put your InfluxDB database on another machine, maybe something with faster storage or faster network. If you try and load these down too much over wireless, you're going to run into some issues. Also, the timing of this could be changed a little bit. Right now I'm only doing it every 35 seconds. I think about every 15 or 12 seconds is about the quickest you can get it to respond, so probably wouldn't set it too much lower than that, or you'll start to get errors in that process ID over there where it's not running or it's not running in enough time. That's pretty much all I had for this video. The sky's the limit from there. Grafana videos, there's lots of them out there on what to do with that data once you have it. You could just as easily have changed this to be a graph as well, instead of a gauge. And it's as easy as just switching it over to a graph. And then making sure that your null value is connected so that you can see it. Once it is in there, you can change it to whatever color you want, and custom color palettes. Sky's the limit. Have a good one.